But at the kind of bottom of everything is this inescapable fact that we are connected to nature. We are of nature.
Mhm.
And for a long time, people have known that that's the most wise and powerful tool that we have at our disposal. Welcome to Soror Mystica, a podcast exploring life's mysteries and magic through its symbols.
I'm Mariana Lewis, an archetypal tarotist.
And I'm astrologer Cristina.
And just as the Soror Mystica guided the alchemist through his holy work, we hope to be your mystic sisters in these conversations, guiding you deeper into the symbolic life.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to episode 50 of Soror Mystica. Feels nice to have like a big round number. I don't know why that matters, but
50 is a big number.
50 is a big number, so good for us. Good job, Mariana, and me. And I've been away from the show for a little while, so I'm really happy to be back. For this iteration of the show. Today, we're going to be exploring the idea of magic, both in a kind of what would we say, like a Platonic or a Renaissance sense, or just reaching back into the ancient past with magic, and also kind of bringing that into the present moment, thinking about what it means for us as modern witches, because I think that a lot of you tuning into the show are just that, or you're curious about what that means and what that entails. So we're looking to kind of illuminate that as the veil thins, right? We're filming this in mid-October.
Yeah.
Libra season, but it's the darkening time of the year, and Samhain is coming up, and it's just a nice time to celebrate and explore what it means to be a magical person.
Totally unintentionally, last night I watched The Craft for the first time.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. I just realized that that's a little synchronicity.
That was really funny. That's such a good seasonal watch. Yeah. Did you like it?
I did. It was great. It was kind of chaotic. I've known about this movie forever. I have no idea what happens in it, so it was very surprising.
It's really intense. I
Yeah.
agree with the chaos element of it, but it's it's so good. It's so
Yeah,
great.
I loved it. It's a very good entry into spooky season. Cool. So you have a program coming up that we want to talk about too, because this one is also really lined up with spooky season and witchy season. And this one is really, really an exciting thing because it's a little bit different than your normal astrological programming, but all for the witches and witch curious people.
Yeah, exactly. So I taught this class last year, actually, for the first time. It's called the Witch Triumvirate. And it is a class that's really designed to kind of help you build your magical toolkit, because there is a lot of information out there about ritual and magic and what does magic even mean and witchcraft and how to do spells. And of course, there are so many eclectic approaches to magic. There's no one right way to do it. But I am a practicing witch, and I have my own ritual practice and routine, and I think that it is good. And so in this class, I'm really striving to share that with my students and give people a behind the scenes peek into what does it mean to not just do a spell when you want something to happen, but how to work with the planets to align yourself with astrological timing so that you're catching a really powerful wave of positive energy to help you manifest what you're looking for. Or, what does it mean to use certain herbs and spell work, how to blend certain things together to align again with the planets and their kind of magic. So the class is expanded from what I offered last year, because when I was teaching it, I was like, oh, there could be so much more in this. I could keep going on about this forever. So I doubled it in length. And we are going to be talking about all kinds of amazing things. So astrological magic, which is really the art of timing your rituals to the moments that the planets give us. Electional astrology, which is specifically a branch of astrology that makes you pick a chart or tells you how to pick a chart for a particular working. So, you can use electional astrology to time anything. You can use it to time the beginning of a road trip that you're taking with your friends. You can use it to plan a wedding. You can time a breakup with it. You can send an important email to somebody with it. So there's lots that can unfold from electional astrology, and demystifying that I think is really important for
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
We are going to be meeting, these classes are on Fridays, and so we're going to be meeting on Halloween, Samhain, and that's going to be a sigil crafting
Oh,
workshop.
that is so cool.
So that's fun, kind of arts and crafty. And so along with sigil work in that class, we're going to talk about automatic writing and dream symbolism. And then the class continues, and we will talk more about poetic spell crafting and building a planetary altar. So lots and lots of things to choose from. And they're all part of my practice in various ways. So it feels like a very sort of natural offering, I guess, for me. And it is less maybe astrologically intensive than, or less, it's not less technical, but it's less focused on just astrology than my normal stuff. So I'm excited. So anyway, class starts on October 17th. If you're listening to this and you took the Witch Triumvirate last year, you are invited back with a special like sign up code. And I've sent a few emails about that to people. So if you look in your emails from me, you'll see a special code. And then everybody else has until October 17th to sign up. And that's our first class. So I
Wow.
hope hope you guys come.
It's gonna be a great one. This is so I love this. Did you do the sigil crafting one
No,
last
I
year?
didn't. That was one of the things that people asked for actually,
Mhm.
and then I was like, we can totally talk about sigils. So,
That's great. That sounds like a lot of fun. So everyone should do it 100%. And I also just briefly want to mention that I have a program as well starting October 29th, called Princess, Priestess, Goddess, Witch. Every time I say it, I laugh out loud because it's
it's a
very
great
silly.
title.
I don't know why I liked it. Anyway, it's exploring 4 archetypes of female or feminine power in Western consciousness. So I got like one kind of snarky comment on Instagram from somebody who was like, "You're not having any warrior ladies in this, and it's talking about feminine power." I was like, "Well, yeah, because this is not about like force. It's
Mhm,
about these archetypes that do have power, but have been imprisoned, silenced, murdered, maligned in society. So finding their natural, authentic power in stories, myths, archetypal scholarship, and also in real women. So I'm going to be talking about some real people and how they embody these archetypes. So that's going to start October 29th. And I'm also with the Jung Society of Austin doing just a one-off lecture on the death card in the tarot. So we're just going to dig deep into the spookiness of death and its symbology. And that's going to be October 24th. We'll put a link in the show notes for that too.
mhm, mhm,
So that'll be fun. So we both got a lot of programming going on right now. We always do this to ourselves right before holiday season, and then by the time
mhm.
the holiday comes, we're like, "Ooh, too much.
Yep.
Been too much." But it'll. We got good stuff going on.
Yeah, it's a good time of year for it. I think that, after summer when people have been really, really social and extroverted, it's actually great for me. Like, I love this time of year because I like to turn back to my library and get back
Mm-hmm.
into my practices that I've maybe neglected because I've been doing too many things with the outside world. So
Yeah,
it's a good thing, I think, to overload now.
yeah.
Mhm.
It's like the perfect dark academia witch season.
Yeah,
Yeah,
totally. Yeah, we have
yeah.
to lean into it.
Uh-huh.
The other thing, timing wise, that I haven't shared here, but have shared in other places on the internet, and if you know me in real life, obviously you know, but I am pregnant. I'm expecting a human child to arrive in early December.
Not a cat child.
Nope, I have two of those. And yeah, so I'm eagerly anticipating that as a big change in my world,
Mm-hmm.
and have been navigating this year. So I stepped back from the show for a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and love that Alyssa Polizzi was able to
She's so good.
be the other Italian girl to fill in for me in my role and do an amazing job. So I'm grateful to her for that. But so yeah, that's my other news. And I think that I will be again like stepping away from things for a few months as I get my footing and reorient myself in whatever new phase we find ourselves in. And so yeah, we'll see what happens come Sagittarius season. That's the forecasted date.
Yep.
But who knows what happens. So I'll keep you guys posted, I guess.
Yeah, make sure to be somewhere on, I don't know, Instagram or something, and I'm sure there'll be announcements and all the good stuff. So yeah, we've missed you over here, obviously. And every time the couple times we had the episode without you, I was like, I wish I could say why, but it's not my business to tell the whole internet.
All good. It's so funny. It's like because it's not a secret to anyone like I see in person. But it does feel big to share with like a wide like
The
with
whole
the internet.
world.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Mhm.
It's a weird thing
It
to just be
feels
like,
like
hello, everybody that I maybe have never met in person or even online, but you are here, listening to
exactly.
me. It can feel intimidating. Yeah, I can
Yeah,
imagine.
and I cherish everybody who tunes in, but I also
Yeah.
have felt kind of like feral for the past several months. It's like I feel like an animal, just like everybody stay. So it's been nice to navigate that, but yeah. So this is great, great little mini return, and then we'll see. We'll
Yeah,
see.
and then another break. We'll keep everybody posted.
Mhm.
So, but let's talk about if you've read anything recently.
I just finished a series of short stories by James Salter, who is kind of like he's like a contemporary American writer, and he's one of these guys that's like definitely on the line of being misogynist in a way that I think is like
Fun.
really annoying. But you also are very compelled to read his stories because they're very human. So
Yeah.
the collection is called Last Night, and it's just like a lot of gossipy stories about like couples going to a party, but then they have like a dark secret, and it's good. It was very quick reading. It was very light, and that's the most recent thing that I read.
That's
But
lovely.
yeah, that's it.
I feel very snooty. I'm reading so the poem, or you've probably heard of it at least, that Dark Night of the Soul by St. John of the Cross.
Hmm.
So people have heard that phrase before, but it actually comes from a poem by a 16th century Spanish mystic. And so he also wrote an accompanying commentary about
Mm,
the poem. So I've been reading that. So it feels very
that's
snooty.
cool. That's
It's
sweet. That's like totally normal for us.
yeah, but I've been loving it. It's really it's quite interesting, and he has a lot to say about the deprivation and privation of God being the only way to let go of the act of meditation and seek and learn the practice of contemplation, which is basically the difference between trying to analyze and mentalize your way through experience and life and God and all this stuff, and instead, you know, just be led, just go into the soul space, um, and just move through there. So it's very interesting, and
Hmm.
so I've been enjoying that a lot. And I also just finished a book of like bulk of letters and just been in a poetic mindset, I guess.
Hmm.
So that's what's I guess it's good like pre-Scorpio
Yeah.
reading
Hmm.
as we
No,
prepare.
that's super, super lovely. Yeah, one of the things that I've been thinking about is like since we recently moved, I really only have like this bookshelf behind me if you're watching the video version of this. And I feel like I miss so many of my specific books and they're just in storage.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, how am I going to free them? I don't know. There's no room for them in here.
One
It's,
day.
yeah, it's frustrating to me because I just keep staring at these and I'm like, you're not the ones I need. You're not the ones I want.
Well, your bathroom is so big, you could just put a bookshelf up in
That
there.
is true. In our apartment, it's like the strangest use of space ever. It's gigantic. It's a gigantic bathroom. You
Yeah.
think they would have put like a nice big bathtub in there, but they didn't.
It's just a normal bathtub.
It's just
I
a
know.
normal guy. Anyway, yeah, we could totally put a bookshelf in there and then
Just let all your books get waterlogged and
let's
mold.
ruin them.
Yeah. Well,
So it's fine. It's all good.
yeah.
Okay, cool. So I think that yeah, let's
Let's talk
dive
about
in.
magic.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you want to like give some grounding in the, the Platonic ideas and
Yeah.
ideal magic?
Yeah, so magic, obviously, it's one of these words that can mean so many different things. If we're reading Harry Potter, it's going to mean something very different than if we're reading Agrippa. But magic is something that has existed forever as something connected to nature, as the principles of what is unseen. I actually have a really good quote by Jung
Hmm.
who talks about that. He says that the practice of magic consists in making what is not understood understandable in an incomprehensible manner.
Hmm.
And I think that that's a very good and confusing, but good summary of what magic has been historically. It's that we're taking what is not understood, right? The way that the world works together and things connect together and all this stuff that, yes, now science explains a lot of it, obviously, but it takes what is not understood, what we can't understand about the world, and makes it understandable by some kind of ineffable, like, working, like, formula. Like, we don't really know how this works, but it makes the world understandable. So in the Neoplatonic Europe, where we had so much of the magic that we practice now, it derives from that era in history. All of it is trying to understand the connectivity of things through the natural world. So we have the theory of correspondences, which we've mentioned on the podcast like 10,000 times, I feel like, where if you're going to try to work with someone who's melancholy, right, and fix their melancholy, then you're probably going to use this musical key, and this plant, and work under this day, planetary day, and all of these things are going to correspond and align together to create some kind of network of you know change, of intention. We're trying to intentionally do this thing. We don't know exactly why this works, but we believe it works, and that's the magical element. So it's the unseen thing. And so in Europe in the Neoplatonic era, so we're talking about like 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th century. It was like a science to them, right? It was like, this is what works, this is what you do. There's certainly a lot of magic involved, but it was also pretty well established. Like, this is a lot of charts out there. A lot of people had a lot to say. Ficino and Agrippa is one of the really big ones. And just a lot of magi out there working with stuff. And then of course the more this that led into the legacy of the Hermetic tradition, the neo Hermetic tradition. I don't know what the term is for that,
Mm-hmm.
where we're talking about Arthur Waite and um, the Eliphas Levi, who is the one who kind of rediscovered the tarot again and kind of brought it back into popularity, and all these people who are in that Hermetic tradition, like trying to look for the esoteric secrets of things. They're not as focused on the magic as much as like the secret
Mm-hmm.
of stuff, but it's very much drawn out of that tradition. And from that, we have the magic that we have now, or the way that we talk about it. It's been kind of reclaimed. It's part of it, at least. So that's like when we're talking about like that older idea of magic, that's really what we're talking about, the invisible interconnectedness of nature that we can break down, discern, and then decide how we work with. And so everything's connected to everything else. That's the whole point.
Yeah. Yeah, the interconnectedness of all things is kind of the phrase that I like to use the most when talking
Mm-hmm.
about magic. And it's kind of it's a simple idea, but it's something that to people in our contemporary space, a lot of people, probably not people listening to the show, but a lot of people have forgotten or would deny or would find ridiculous, because we rely so much on technology. We rely so much on other forms of knowing and making meaning. But at the kind of bottom of everything is this inescapable fact that we are connected to nature. We are of nature.
Mm-hmm.
And for a long time, people have known that that's the most wise and powerful tool that we have at our disposal. there's definitely a connection between magic and power and
Yeah.
harnessing power. And so I think that what's interesting too about like magic in a capital M sense
Yeah.
of it, that
Mm-hmm.
it got really, really codified. It got very, like you said, made into a science or made into a really scholarly, rigorous thing.
Yeah.
There's also this split, I would say, between maybe a patriarchal version of magic and then a
Mm-hmm.
folk feminine version of magic
Yeah.
that is very important to also have distinctions about as people who are reclaiming a magical
Mm-hmm.
practice today.
Yeah.
That's not to say that the kind of established doctrine of signatures and theory of elements and theory of humors, which is definitely, it was like part of the university education in the Renaissance. It was part of this very official culture. That's not
Mm-hmm.
to say that we don't like it and we don't use it, but
Yeah.
it's interesting to really interrogate the patriarchal and when I say matriarchal, or just like the kind of split between
Mm-hmm.
official culture and folk culture in
Yeah.
magic that's always existed.
Yeah.
Because, before the more established importation of magic into Renaissance or medieval science, medicine, culture, thought, theology, people were just experimenting with
Yeah.
plants and worshiping the moon and knowing about the seasons and following, the migration paths of animals and knowing when plants were going to grow in certain areas. And that is a kind of practical knowledge, but it's also a magical knowledge as
Mm-hmm.
well.
Mm-hmm.
So, whether you're a shaman in like a Paleolithic society or you're a Renaissance magician trying to cure somebody's melancholic disposition, or you're a witch today trying to
Yeah.
figure out how to just empower yourself, there are so many versions of magic that I think are all important to know about. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Beautifully said. I think that idea of the patriarchal versus the more feminine experience of magic is something that's really big today,
mhm.
because it is interesting that most witches today, most people who dabble in witchcraft are, most of them are women. Not all of them, obviously, certainly not, but it's something that we, yeah, really connect to the feminine experience and reclaiming the feminine experience and exploring it and all this stuff. Um, and yet it is such a male thing historically. Like it is
Mhm.
so, like when you look at all of these people that we draw this tradition from, they're obviously, I mean, we know that history doesn't allow women spaces, but they're all, it's so masculine in this way of, as you said, trying to codify it and hierarchize
Yeah.
things and try to understand it intellectually through a more logos orientation of like reason and rationality. It was very much a science to many of them. They really, I mean, they dabbled in the occult, but they're like, well, this is because it's true, and we're going to prove that to you. You just, science doesn't understand it exactly yet. Like
Mhm.
alchemy was called, it was a chemical thing. It was really proto physics,
Mhm.
proto chemistry. So these are things that developed out of them, but it is something that is very much transformed into a feminine. There's a lot of femininity archetypally, at least we're talking about here, around it. And it's far more connected to that Eros experience, the way that, Jungians would talk about the Eros Logos split, Logos being like the mind and reason, Eros being like the natural side, embodiment, connection, soul, all that stuff. Like we're far more interested in it on that end, which I find to be a very exciting transition,
Yeah.
and reclaiming it. And so that's kind of like there's such an emphasis in modern witchcraft around lunar cycles, which certainly they were important back then, but it wasn't necessarily the focus of things. It's so much the focus of the craft now, which I think is really, really beautiful, a really beautiful transition.
Yeah, it's amazing to think about just I would say I don't know, like the preponderance of male voices, and they're brilliant, right? These
Yeah.
are like Paracelsus, cool, awesome, amazing. Great. These Agrippa, awesome. I have no issue with
Yeah.
these thinkers, but if that was like the last big iteration of magic, it's interesting to think about how today it really has been reclaimed by something akin to the feminine, something akin to just the non hypermasculine,
Yeah.
the erotic rather than
Yeah.
the logos oriented. And I think too that it's important to remember that a lot of those ideas that were uh, taken into the university, into medicine, even, into just like law and the understanding of the timing of things
Yeah.
in Renaissance and medieval cultures were imported from a folk tradition
Yep.
that they would tell, women practitioners, midwives, herbalists, anybody who dealt with rituals of birth and death, that the way that they did it was wrong. They would make it illegal, they would make it punishable, and it would have to become a cult. It would have to become secret. So there's like official culture magic, and then there's still this sort of underground magic. It never goes away. It's the same thing with astrology. Astrology through the years was very important to culture. The earliest we know about is Babylon, but
Yeah.
it's probably undocumented and more, important earlier than that. But over time, and thanks to obviously Christianity coming into the fore,
Mm-hmm.
astrology had to go underground in order to survive. But it just did that. It just went underground, and
Yeah.
so it became this occult perspective on the world, and now it's kind of been reborn too. So
Mm-hmm.
it's very interesting to think about these like waves of time and history, and just
Mm-hmm.
kind of wonder. And so for us now, like, what is it really? What are we doing with it? And I think
Yeah.
that that's one of the reasons why I wanted to put together this class last year, because I had just moved like from the West Coast back home to the East Coast. I had no altars. I was like living, at a family member's house, which was a blessing, not complaining there, but I didn't have my own space, and I
Okay.
didn't
Yeah.
have my own like, I didn't feel like I had permission even to be in touch with these components of ritual that I normally would. I didn't have most of my magic supplies. They were in storage or they were in transit. And I just was very adrift. And so I was
Yeah.
thinking to myself, what does it actually look like for me to do a ritual? What do I need? What do I care about? And so I kind of broke it down into these three pieces of astrological magic, astroherbalism, and then creative spellcraft, poetic
Mm-hmm.
spellcraft. And so I think that it's a good way of showing people these are the options. Like these
Yeah.
are some of the options that we can work with. It's certainly not all of them. And I'm certainly not saying I'm like an expert magician. However, I'm an experienced one. So it's like these are things that you can all take from and build your own more enriched perspective
Mm-hmm.
on magic, drawing from both the ancient stuff and then the more contemporary approaches, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the vision, I think, for us as contemporary practitioners of magic.
Yeah. I mean, you might not call yourself an expert, but if there is such a thing as an expert in any of these sorts of things, but you really do know what you're talking about in a way that I think a lot of people, when they enter this space, they're enchanted with the ideas and don't know how to apply anything. They don't really know. This is one of the, I'm sure you get this all the time. When I first started my YouTube channel, I put out a video because this is what everybody was doing. And I was like, why not? I have my own take on this of like, are you a witch?
Mm-hmm.
And everybody had these listicles of like, you're a witch if you have really high intuition or you feel weird when you walk into certain spaces or like whatever, some BS stuff, honestly. And I put out a video that's like, if you think you're a witch and you want to be one, go ahead. Go do it. Enjoy, live that life. But I still got like so many people commenting that were like, yeah, but how do I know if I am one? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what is it that tells me that I have access to this thing? Um, and we're not even talking here about having special powers or having special intuition or being a little psychic. That's its own thing. You can have all of that and not be a witch, certainly. But what does it mean to engage in magic, right? And to work with magic, to live a life that is infused with magic. I think that this is really what my point in the video was, is like, that's the way you want to live, then go live that way. But the question of how do we do that? What does that look like? I think is very intimidating for most of us. and this is, I see this all the time when people get their very first tarot reading, either with me or with somebody else, and then they come back the second time and they're looking for that same magical kind of brushing up against something, where it's like something happened here that I can't explain, and yet it was true and it had an effect, and I want to encounter that ineffable thing again. And then it doesn't, they don't, it doesn't always work the second time, or then it kind of loses its enchantment, and we don't realize that this is, or we do realize that we don't know how to kind of navigate the thing of like magic as a practice. If we're working with magic, it is a practice. It is not something that is always just going to be like the craft, where it's just like they say a spell and all of a sudden they walk on water and stuff like that. It's like, oh, this happens. It's something that we have to do, like engage in ritual. So what do you think about this idea of like, what magic looks like as something that we live in a more mundane or regular way?
Yeah, I think that it actually means that we make space for stuff that isn't super on the radar of the everyday, and we
Yeah.
have to consciously do that. And
Yeah.
in doing that, it's very rewarding. Like you will feel more in tune with the phases of the moon and
Yeah.
your own emotional experience. You will feel more in tune with maybe your own ancestors and your own sort of folk traditions that your family was embedded in before whatever monotheistic religion took over wherever your family's from. So,
Yeah.
thinking about that is really important. And so I think that living that way means we have to intentionally clear space. And that is, it feels hard to do because our world is very cluttered already. We live in an attention as a commodity economy, basically
Yeah.
at this point. And there's lots of bad stuff that can definitely arrest our attention. And so
Hmm.
it's a kind of like an act of rejecting things that are not good for us. And by good, I mean like not beneficial for our soul, and making space for things that, even though it might feel silly, like at the beginning, to light incense every day and like say a prayer, or use the 30 minutes before bed for some active imagination for dream work, and see what you see there. It really does help you construct a worldview
Yeah.
or a way of being that feels really authentic, I think, and that can
Hmm.
be really exciting. It's also important, though, to do it your own way,
Yeah.
because I think a lot of people feel like they're putting on a costume or that just
Hmm.
doesn't feel authentic. And so I hear that a lot from students when I talk about magic and ritual. It's like, okay, well, you're telling me this, but I kind of do it my own way. Is that okay if I break the rules? And the answer is like, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's really about what things mean to you. So while we have things like the doctrine of signatures, which
Hmm.
says that, plants, planets, and crystals have a kind of relationship to each other. If you have a personal synchronistic relationship with sunflowers that means something different than the sun, or identity, because those are like the keywords that we would link there, you are allowed to have that. You're
Yeah.
allowed to do that.
Hmm.
You're allowed to make your own symbology. And it's good to blend that, I think, with the more established framework to give yourself some structure.
Yeah.
But you are so allowed to take that and make it what you will. And so that's why I like to also advocate for creative workings, like writing poetry as a spell, or not active meditation, automatic writing as a kind of way of like mining the psyche for symbols that might be important to you. You are as much a kind of strong barometer of what's magical and what's potent as the rules of the planetary days,
Yeah.
So yes, it's very important.
Hmm. Yeah. I think that that's something that I say to my tarot students a lot when, obviously with the tarot cards, there's like a set, meaning for each card, and this is what we go off of. So we're like, okay, I pulled the Four of Swords. What does it mean? And, my intuition tells me that I want to interpret it this way, or I see the way that the guy's lying there and it makes me think of this thing in my life or whatever. And we're always like, is that allowed? And I tell them all the time, like, yeah, okay, so we have this set cipher of interpretations for the cards that is like a general idea, which is also arguably arbitrary. But the whole point is that you develop your own language through these symbols so that you can speak to your own unconscious, your own psyche. That's the whole point. So if they have this individual meaning, great, you really achieved something there.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't mean that the meaning shouldn't change, or next time you see the Four of Swords, you're like, is this really what it's about? And you go to a guidebook and you have a new idea and you're like, oh, that actually applies more right now. I'm broadening my understanding. That's great. We should do that all the time. But if you have, something about this card or this element, this thing that speaks to you in a very individual way, yes, that's the whole point. I think that that's what makes it different, as we were saying before, from this older system of like very established, rigid kind of parameters of like, this is how magic works, because we do have science now. So there's a lot of things we know actually do work. Like in the year 1650, if you did have melancholy, they'd probably do a whole set of things to lift your melancholy that were magical. And today, you could do those same things. You could do a lot of things. You could also take a pill and be better. Like, we have options that are much, much greater than what they had in 1650. So it's this thing of your magic can be extremely flexible, and it can be used for whatever you need, and it can be entirely yours. What's intimidating about that is that I don't think that we are ever meant to create our own things in a void, right? That can feel very intimidating. And we're like, okay, so I'm going to just say that doing this in this way means this for me, even if there's this long tradition where it says that this is really what it's about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can't, I don't think it works to say like, oh, I'm going to work with Jupiter, and Jupiter means like, sorrow and
Right.
like, destruction or something now, because that's what
Yeah.
I decide. I
Yeah.
think that there's a limit to that. We want to bring from the traditions who
Mm-hmm.
have established these things and studied these things for centuries. But then we decide how to create our own rituals, which can be very intimidating. This is something that Joseph Campbell talked about, which I have wrestled with for like most of my life. He basically says that, yeah, we want to make our own religions, but we can't, because we can't pick and choose these different rituals from these different things and expect to have the same result, where we have this intense connection with a god, because what rituals are the manifestation of the mythology. And so if the mythology is scattered and doesn't have a core identity, then we're always going to feel like it's not quite right or something missing from it. And I think a lot of us do suffer that feeling of like, well, this doesn't, what is my practice feels kind of shallow, or it feels like I don't know if I'm allowed to do this. But I don't agree with him entirely. I think we're just in a world where that is exactly what we have to do, is that we're trying to create our own mythologies of our life. And so our own rituals to reflect what those mythologies are, and to support that. And that's what we're trying to get to. So it's important to try out different things and to find what's really going to reflect us. And it's also very important to not project, perfection, or this is how stuff is supposed to look. We're talking about something that is so ephemeral and ineffable as magic. There's no one way. There can't be. Otherwise, it is not magic anymore. Then it's something else. Yeah.
Yeah, it can't be. It cannot become too rigid. And I wonder, like, with alchemy, was that like not a failing of alchemy, but like, was that like a problem that alchemy bumped into because it was so prescriptive
Yeah.
about like the different techniques and the goals, and do we get to create the philosopher's stone? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that popped into my head. But the other thing I was thinking about when you were talking was the kind of jumping into the creation of ritual and feeling kind of unsure about how to do that. And one thing that I think is really been helpful to me and helpful maybe to other people who I share this with is like, if you again, the world is so hyper contemporary, it's so dismissive of things that are spiritual,
Yeah.
and it can feel really weird to just all of a sudden start like quote praying to the moon, right? After like saying you're having like a life crisis, you hate your job, you aren't sure of your partnership, you just feel like everything is wrong. And is it going to make you feel more or less crazy to start pretending like the moon can hear you? Like,
Yeah.
I don't really know.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at your family story, even for those of us that don't have a great relationship with our immediate family of origin, every single person comes from a unique culture. And
Mm-hmm.
what I think is really cool to do is spend some time, and maybe this is like my Virgo ness, but researching the region that you come from, getting as specific as you can if you can. Not everybody can,
Yeah.
but like if you can find the town where your people hail from, that town's going to have probably a patron saint
Yeah.
or some kind of patron, spokesperson that will link you to all kinds of really interesting mythologies, folk customs, folk practices, culinary practices, medicinal beliefs. And before you know it, you have this beautiful array of ideas about the sacred that
Yeah.
feel less like imported from somebody else's style of being magical and more particular to you and maybe your heritage. So even if you don't know your grandparents, even if you don't have a good relationship with your mom, you can still look into what that practice might have looked like. And I do think that always reaching back as far as we can in history can help inform us. Not that we need to do everything identical to what people would have done back then, right? I don't even want to know what my Italian ancestors would have thought about, like, getting really sick and like needing to amputate a limb. Like that sounds very bad. But there are things that are helpful that are grounding, spiritual, about the divine, that
Yeah.
can be really, really beautiful. So that's like I think that's one of my biggest pieces of advice
Mhm.
when people ask me, I'm trying to get started. I don't understand how to do it. It feels like I'm just copy pasting random rules, and I don't want to just do that. So how do I make this mine?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think that's really smart. I think that this is like one of our greatest crises as a modern society is that we are returning to the unseen, the unknown. Like, Nietzsche yelled, God is dead. Ah. And everyone was like, okay, great. We're done with that. And now not everyone, but many people are returning and saying, hmm, we're missing something here. We're
Mhm.
missing some kind of sense of magic in the world, of mystery, of meaning, all these things. And we don't want to reclaim the old religions that don't function. There's a reason that we don't have them as strong anymore. People are moving past them. So what is it now? And I think that that's the big question that is kind of like that crisis. And unfortunately, we don't have a lot of good answers yet. I think that this is something that we're going to be studying for the next 200 years, if I
Yeah.
can prophesy that. But the new God is really the self, right? It's like the central identity of you, the soul of you. That's really where we locate it. And so all our magic comes from that place. There's another quote that Jung has here, which is really good. He says that magic is a way of living. If one has done one's best to steer the chariot, and one then notices that a greater other is actually steering it, then magical operation takes place.
Mhm.
So it's this way of living where we're in communion with something, we're steering the chariot, and then at some point we notice that something else is steering it too, or steering it with us, or guiding us as we steer it. And what is that thing? Jung would certainly call it the capital S self, which we might call the soul or the higher self or whatever term you have for it. That magic is in a way, our ego mind, like our conscious mind, trying to figure out a way to tap into the greater thing that is connected to everything, right? As one with all stuff. And I think a lot of people get very fixated on how to do magic, like, oh, you need the right color candle and you need this and that. Those things I think do matter. Sometimes we want to be intentional about it. But the real point is that we're trying to, as you said, like make a poem into a spell. We're just trying to contact the part of us that is very much there, that is part of everything. And so
Mhm. Yeah.
influences everything and is connected to everything. And that's where the magic resides. We can like pause in our life and say, oh, I think I'm guiding my life, but there's something else that's guiding it through me. Then we're in a magical moment. Instantaneously, we're connected to it. I think that that's That's at least how, you don't have to think of it as the self. You can think of it as anything you want to, source, whatever. But that's the point, I think, is what we're trying to get to ultimately when we live these magical lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that there are really like two different kinds of practice or idea that should be going on simultaneously when we're learning about this stuff. It's like it's very good to learn maybe the foundational ideas and rules of,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, color
Yeah.
correspondence. We have to know the symbols of astrology. We have to know the symbols of the planets. We have to know, some kind of basic framework in
Yeah.
order for this to, I think, really feel like it has some heft to it, but at the same time, we have to be in touch with something in ourselves that's personal and not just be,
Yes.
putting all of our reliance on a system that somebody else created. And that's when we get to blend those two things. That's when we really do feel empowered in our
Yeah.
practice because it feels like we own it and we speak
Yeah.
that language. Hmm.
Beautifully said. I think that's exactly it. It's when it actually does feel enchanted, when it
Hmm.
has that feeling we're looking for. As I mentioned before, people come to the tarot the first time, they pull some cards, they're like, whoa, something happened there. I connected with something, I don't know what it was. And then they
Hmm.
come back again looking for it. But this time they have their notebooks ready and they're going to take notes and they're going to capture it. And it's like, yeah, you might, but also we're doing all the formula. You're trying to do that correctly. We also have to make room for that mysterious
Hmm.
thing, the magical thing.
Yeah.
This is one thing that we have to preserve whenever we're doing magic, is that there is an element to it that we cannot understand.
Hmm.
And if we try to understand it, if we try to make sense of it, then it's not magic anymore. Now it is something entirely different. It's science. It's whatever stupid thing. It's
Yeah.
not magic.
There's like a slight, we have to kind of abdicate control in
Yes.
a lot of
Yeah.
these spaces and just kind of let whatever is meant to arise. So, but that can be hard too. That can be hard
It
to
is.
feel comfortable doing. And am I doing it right or wrong? So, that just takes practice.
Yeah.
And
I think that's, and I'll say that, for me personally, that's the hardest part still for me. It's like I've never been too serious of like you've always been the one who is so excellent at creating these beautiful spells and working with all of these tools so well. And I often am just like, I'm just gonna light a candle and that's gonna be it for me today. And that's enough. Sometimes that's
but that
it.
is enough. That can be
Yeah.
very powerful.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But connecting to the invisible thing is the harder part in it. Even if I'm like, okay, well, I'm not even going to do too much, I'm just going to light a candle, but still that connection part can be really hard. So please do not feel, if you're trying to do everything right and it still feels kind of like empty, or you're not sure if it's really correct. That is so normal to have that.
Mhm.
I think that is the journey for us as spiritual people, is to find the meaning in it and get to the place where it really feels enchanted and powerful. That's, I
Mhm.
think, the goal ultimately. And so that's why classes like this one that you're going to do is so good, because it's like, let's give you a whole framework of things to try and explore with and see where it really works for you. So you don't feel, one, like you're doing it alone. That's another big problem with being a witch or being in the spiritual world today, is that we don't have the community of like churches and all this stuff anymore. So it does feel so lonely sometimes. And the internet is a cesspool. That's generally where we try to get our information. It's just by Google searches, which is so sad. Google
Mhm.
should not be our priest. So having people to actually tell us, who are from these traditions or learned about these traditions and studied them, very important. It's very important to actually have real humans being guides for us. And then from that, play with all of this until it feels like it's yours.
Mhm.
And I think
Yeah.
that's what we're all trying to do. That's the way to go. So we did it. Beautiful discussion on magic.
Mhm. Well said. Yes. Yes.
Great.
Yes.
All right, let's do a dream.
Okay.
If you're enjoying this podcast, we encourage you to leave a review or learn more about how you can support us on Mighty Networks, where you can get access to some exciting exclusive offerings. Or you can connect with us by sharing a symbolic experience, whether from a dream or synchronicity, for us to explore on the show. Thank you to today's sharer, and please tell us your symbolic experience or connect with us on our website, sorormysticapodcast.com.
Are you a small business looking to reach a targeted audience of people interested in all things esoteric? If this sounds like you, Soror Mystica would love to invite you to become an ad partner.
We offer a highly tailored audience of mindful, curious, depth seeking listeners, and we would be delighted to showcase your business and offerings to new hearts and new minds. Simply fill out an advertiser application form at our website, linked in the show notes below, or navigate to sorormysticapodcast.com/advertise with us.
So the dreamer says, I was on a work trip in Orange County, staying in a coastal hotel on the 12th floor with my firm's president and a partner. While discussing work, I looked out the window and realized we were almost at sea level. Panic erupted as the ocean began to rise, and we fled down the stairs to the parking structure. I got into my rental car, the same one I've been driving since my real-life accident, and tried to escape, losing control and crashing into other cars before finally getting out. As I drove inland, the streets turned into water. People screamed and climbed onto rocks. I called my husband and kids. They were alive but struggling to stay safe, as even our inland home flooded. Desperate, I climbed higher, grasping at rocks while chaos surrounded me. A child grabbed my ankle, begging for help. I almost kicked them off before reaching to save them, but they slipped away, screaming. Reaching a high ledge, I saw a winding, half-submerged freeway stretching towards safety. Emergency workers with megaphones shouted for us to stay calm and remain on high ground, but I felt I had to take the risk and go. Looking down, I saw strange sea life rising with the tide, an octopus wrapped around a guardrail, a starfish painfully clinging to my leg. I tore it off, but it kept returning. Torn between instinct and instruction, I stood on the edge, surrounded by water and fear, unsure whether to stay or go.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, I'm glad I didn't have that one. That sounds scary.
No, it's so interesting. Like right away, and because this is a full moon dream, and so astrology is being invoked in this, in this description.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me that they're on the 12th floor.
Yeah, I know. I caught that too. It's like, that's an interesting number.
Yeah, it's an interesting number. I mean, numerologically, it reduces to 3, so it's like, high priestessy, but also the 12th house in astrology is the house of the collective unconscious. And since this is like a water rising dream, a flood dream, an oceanic dream, that's very much connected to that symbol of the collective unconscious as well, and the unpredictability and like the fear that comes up in the 12th house. So like right off the bat, I'm curious about where the full moon was for this person in their chart. Could very well have been anywhere else but the 12th house, but was this a 12th house dream, or are you having an important 12th house transit right now? Like, look at your 12th house and see what planets are moving through there, or also whatever planet rules your 12th house, is that planet receiving an important transit from a planet moving around right now? Those are two ways that we can hold that information. And so that was just like spur of the moment right off the bat.
Yeah, I thought something with the 12 too. It's very specific. Do you find that dreams intensify around the full moon?
Yeah. Always, like, the lunations bring bad sleep. So even if it's the new moon or the full moon, when the moon is at these like kind of peak energetic moments of high or low, we have these nocturnal experiences. And so it's definitely, you can have a crazy dream whenever, but the full moon and the new moon specifically are really interesting dreams to work with. I would also say that since this was a full moon dream, I would look 6 months back and see what was going on for you around, like, I think it was March 29th of this year, when we had a previous new moon in Aries. Because that might have been like the beginning of some kind of psychic experience for this person that manifested now, 6 months later. Conversely, you could also hold all this in your head and just keep an eye out around next Aries season, next new moon in Aries, and see what emerges, because there might also be something important connected to this dream now. So that's how the lunations work. They're in like these 6-month cycles.
Yeah, I think that it definitely feels like like, I mean, we have the symbol of water, which of course we know is tied to the moon. So just looking at that, this idea of this like high tide rising, rising, rising does feel very much like a full moon dream. And when we're talking about water, we're talking about the unconscious, which of course goes so much with what you were saying about the 12th house, which is very interesting. We're talking about like, there's a difference between like being near the unconscious and having some kind of relationship with it, and here being inundated by it and suffocated, drowned by it. So I think that the fact that it's a pretty common dream to feel like water is rising and then you're, you know, stuck somewhere and then you're going to get swallowed up by it. And so I feel like that's a very typical dream of like the unconscious material that's going on is intensifying and the ego feels like it's going to kind of be submerged in it and lose its control. This feels catastrophic though. It is full like Armageddon. So there's a much, and there's people that you're trying to save and worried about, and then like the image of the child, I almost got the image like in the death card where the death has already like run over the king. The king is dead underneath the horse. And then there's a woman there and she's like turned away. And there's a bishop there and he's like praying. He's like, I'm a bishop. You can't take me. And then there's just this little child who's just kind of there, like looking for like someone to cling on to. That's kind of the image I got of like that death archetype of the child sort of being lost in this, or, you know, the image of innocence not being saved to. That was a very powerful image there. There's a lot of panic and sadness and responsibility that feels like it's too heavy in this dream.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. That, and then always when we see like a child in the dream, or yeah, I think a child just in general in the dream, it's like, is that a piece of you that you have been trying to ignore? Is it asking for your attention?
Yep.
Also, there could be, of course, you know, unrelated anxiety about children in general and this person's psyche. So I think one of the coolest things that the Jungian framework offers us is that the things that we encounter in our dreams are like different faces of the self or the soul.
Yeah.
And I think that idea is really interesting because instead of being like, what does it mean that there was a child in my dream? It's like, well, where is the child in me in the dream and what happened to them? So not being able to save or connect with that version of self feels very, very interesting to explore.
Yeah, and at first you were going to kick it off. You were saying like I don't have the ability to save this child, and then you changed your mind, which I think is very interesting. And then you're also being grabbed onto by these sea creatures. Like it's almost like it feels very Neptunian too. Like like you're trying to be dragged in to the sea, almost like you're trying to become part of the sea. It's trying to make you part of it, and you're frantically trying to kick those things off. There's a liminal crossing in this dream. There's like a line that has been crossed, and so the ocean, the unconscious, is totally invading the realm of the conscious. It just keeps getting higher. The sea creatures are coming out. Everything is just being swallowed up. And then there's this tension between how did you put it? There's a tension between like instruction and instinct. That's what you said. Torn between instinct and instruction. I find that to be a very interesting sentence there. Like instinct, we can say is unconscious, very much. Like it's intuition, right? It's just the part that says, do this, go here, save yourself. This is what you need to do. And instruction is very conscious, almost super ego in the Freudian sense of like, this is what you're supposed to do. This is how you're supposed to handle it. Listen to what you're being told. I think it was Freud, it might have been someone else, who said that whenever we have images of policemen or firefighters or people who are supposed to have this authority who are telling us what to do in a dream, that's super ego. That's like, this is what is right. This is some kind of inherited idea of what you're supposed to be doing from society or from somewhere outside of yourself. Well, not outside of yourself, the super ego, but super ego kind of pulls in from societal, like, you know, rules and stuff. So there's a pull between that idea too of like the instinctual unconscious and that super ego that's kind of like, this is what you're supposed to be doing, it's supposed to be handling, how you're supposed to be handling the situation. That feels very, there's so much energy torn between those two sides, which is really interesting to me too.
Yeah. So then what do we have to do? We have to find the third way.
Yeah.
With those two oppositional forces, and what does that look like for this person? So yeah, like the obligation, and then the kind of more mundane realm of like, I think there was like a boss, right? There's like some work environment here. It's like that's super realistic. And then everything else is just kind of flooding. Literally, you're being flooded by something supernatural or something natural of the natural world, the octopus, starfish, all that stuff. So, I don't know what the answer is, but there's some kind of third meeting place for these ideas that is important to get to, I would say.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I think there's whenever we end a dream without being able to resolve the answer, I'm always fascinated by that. I have these dreams all the time where I'm trying to decide on something so stupid and unimportant. It's like, do I get this flavor or that flavor? And then I'm like stuck and I cannot make the decision, and the dream just ends there and never like lets me make the decision. And I always feel like there's something about the intentionality of the dream ending before that it can happen. It's like saying that the point is the tension of the opposites rather than the resolution. Like there's something about the way that you're engaging the situation where you're frozen or stuck, and that's where the attention is supposed to be brought. This is not, that kind of dumb dream that I have where it's like, do I do this or that? This is literally like, do I take instruction from the outside to save myself and everybody? Or do I listen to my own instinct that says, go there, go to that, do that. This is how you get, save yourself. And so not knowing which is the right thing, I think that I would sit and meditate on that question primarily of like, what is the tension between, do I listen to them and do what I'm told? Is that the way to save myself? Or do I go with instinct? What are the risks in both? And then, that middle way is not something that you're going to just kind of like get to, right? It's going to be something that probably would appear in another dream. You would sort of work your way towards it. But that's the question I would consider primarily, is like, what is the downfall in both of these? And what's the benefit in both of these? And really highlighting that split between the unconscious instinct and that kind of super ego, like society telling you what to do. As you said, the dream started when they're at work, which is generally a very kind of like buttoned up, this is what society, I'm supposed to be this sort of person in this sort of space thing. But you're in this very magical kind of landscape where this insane thing is happening. So there's a tension between those two things.
Yeah. So hopefully that's a good starting point for unraveling the rest of this dream.
Yep. Thanks for sharing. It's very spooky. And make sure to check out Cristina's class coming up. Link will be in the show notes, obviously. And that's starting pretty soon. So make sure to take a look now so you don't miss it. And check out the links for my stuff coming up. And thanks for being here. And hopefully we'll see you sometime soon. Obviously, things are shifting, changing, so we don't have a set schedule, but we appreciate you being here as long as you have, whether it's your first episode or your 50th episode with us. We appreciate you. So we hope to see you soon in some capacity.
Yes, totally. Awesome. Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Thank you for joining us in our conversation today.
Please consider supporting the podcast by leaving a review and following Soror Mystica wherever you listen.
You can also become a more active supporter and a member of the Soror Mystica community by joining us on our Mighty Networks platform.
If you have a symbolic experience that you'd like to share with us for the podcast, you can tell us all about it at sorormysticapodcast.com.
The music for this podcast is written and performed by me, Mariana Lewis, with special thanks to Stefan Lewis. You can connect with both Cristina and myself on Instagram and get to know our work by clicking on the links in the show notes.
As the alchemical motto goes, as above, so below, as within, so without.
May this ancient wisdom continue to guide you deeper.
Until next time, take good care.